to Wolfman's Gaming Den. In this video, we'll learn how to play the game Bali by Klaus Jürgen, a game that plays between 2 to 4 players in roughly 45 minutes. So let's go to the table and see how the game works. Alright, so welcome to the table. Here we have the game set up for a 2-player game. We'll quickly go through how the setup works, and then we'll go into the rules of the game itself and have a look at what a turn could look like. So first off, you will start off by placing the altar at the center of the board. You will lay down the sacrifice cards on the side. These are stacks of the same sacrifice cards in 4 different piles. Each player will get their own player cards that they start off with. These can be identified by the colors on the back of the card. Each player will get a stonemason card and 3 different farmers that they start off with. You will put the stonemason card in front of you, and the 3 different farmer cards will come into your hand. You will also take one of each of the different sacrifice cards available in the game, and you will put this face down in front of you. The sacrifice cards that you have in your hand is meant to be private information, so make sure that these are hidden from your other players. Next up, take one of the reference cards. This is going to be helpful as you go over your first game at least. The rest of the deck over here are composed of a few different kinds of cards. Let's have a look at each different type. So first of all, these are the shrine cards. You can identify the shrine cards because they will have a point value printed at the center and a cost for the stone on the bottom, and then the benefit up top. You will also have stonemason cards similar to the one that you start off with, but these of course have a different back, and these belong to the general supply, and it's not one of the cards you will start off with. Next up, you will have 4 different farmer types available for each one of the 4 different sacrifice goods in the game itself, and they can be identified by the symbol at the top right over here. And these are priest cards, and they can be identified by the artwork on it. Priest cards do not come with any points at the center, so they may look similar to the shrine cards, but you will be able to separate these out based on the printed value at the bottom of the card themselves. What you will do with all of these cards is make a deck, shuffle them all together, and then you will deal out 4 in rows of 4 the way that we have set up over here. So this is set up randomly, and you can see that these are stacked, but all of the cards that are coming up are visible. So that is an important distinction to make. The rest of the cards are then shuffled, and you will keep them as a pile nearby because you will need them over the course of the game. You will put aside your points tokens, which come in denominations of 5 and 1 and 10 to the side, and you will also put aside the stone tokens to the side as well. Choose a starting player, and the starting player will start off with 2 stone resources. So let's say if I was the starting player, I'm starting off with 2. The other player, in this case, because we're playing a 2-player game, they will get 3 resource tokens, 1 more than the person that's starting off with. So you will give them their 3. If you're playing with more players, so a 3rd and a 4th player, the 3rd player will get 1 more stone, which is 4, and the 4th player will get 1 more stone, which is 5. Once we're done with that, you're ready and set up for the game, and you're ready to get started. The game itself takes place over a number of rounds, and you will always play the same sequence for each of those rounds, with some steps being optional. The first step that you will start off with is taking a sacrifice card. This is an optional step. It is not mandatory for you to do it. You may do it if you choose to, and if you do not choose to, then you don't have to do it. The reason why you may or may not want to do it will largely be driven by whether you can afford to pay for the card or not. So let's say, for example, if I wanted to take this banana sacrifice card, the cost that I would have to pay for this is 5 stones minus the number of banana farmers I have played in front of me. Cards in my hand do not count. They must have been played in front of me and be part of my tableau to provide me with that discount. So at the start of the game, if I wanted to get one of these, because I do not have any farmers played out, they would cost me 5 stones. Obviously, I do not have 5 stones at this point, and I would not be able to take that action. So again, this is the optional step. You can also see this optional step laid out over here in your turn overview card. The first step is denoted there. The next, which is where a lot of the gameplay will take place, is where you play your cards. So, as you start off, you do have one Stonemason card that you've already played in front of you as part of the initial setup. And you have your 3 different farmer cards available. So, on your turn, you can either play a farmer card, or a Stonemason card, or a priest card, or a shrine card in front of you. And this is a mandatory action, and you must play a card when available. There are certain unique circumstances when you may not be able to, and we'll come to that a little bit later at the end. So on your turn, if you wanted to play a farmer card, the rule is that you can play between 1 and 3 farmers of the same type as part of the same action. So if I play down 1 farmer card, that is a valid action. If I had a second farmer of the same type, I could play 2 of them out at the same time, and I could play 3 of them a maximum up at the same time as well. Now there is a cost associated with playing these farmer cards. The first farmer card will cost you no stones, so it is free to play. So if I play the first one, I don't have to pay anything. If I wanted to play a second farmer card of the same type as part of my same action, it would cost me 1 stone. And if I wanted to play 3 farmer cards as part of this action, it would cost me 2 stones. So the general rule of thumb is you're paying 1 less stone than the number of farmer cards you played out, and you can play a maximum of 3 farmer cards on the same turn. The next type of card that you can play is a Stonemason card. A Stonemason card is free to play. It will not cost you anything. The way that it will work is if you were to play a Stonemason card, you would stack it. Let's say if this were a Stonemason card, you would stack it right on top of it. So each vertical will have each one different type of card played on it. You can only play 1 Stonemason card at a time. Next up, you can play a priest card, and we'll quickly go through the deck to pull up some of those examples so that I can show you how that would work. So if you were to play a priest card, you would put it in front of you. Priest cards are free as well. They do not cost you anything. You would play it in front of you, and that is going to be your action as far as playing cards is concerned. You cannot play multiple priest cards on the same turn. The last type of card that you can play are the shrine cards, and these cards can be really expensive to play. So chances are you will be waiting towards the after the first few rounds have passed, when you've accumulated enough stone to do these, because each shrine card that you will play over the course of the game will cost you 7 stones. So on your turn, as one of the cards you can play the shrine card, paying a cost of 7 stones, and that is a flat cost, no matter how many other shrine cards you may have already played, or you may have in your hand, or any other such factor. So those are the 4 different kinds of cards you can play on your turn. To recap, farmer cards between 1 and 3, paying 1 less stone than the number of farmers played, Stonemason card, shrine card, or a priest card. And as I mentioned earlier, all of these are played in their own vertical so that you can easily keep track of how many of each one of those you have. The next step, if you have played, and this is an optional step, which will only happen if you have played a shrine card on that turn. So let's say, for example, if on my turn I had played the shrine card, I will bring that back up. If you have played a shrine card, there is going to be a sacrifice phase. Obviously, this is not a phase that will happen every single turn, because if you have not played this, it doesn't matter. But if you have played this, sacrifice phase will now begin, starting with you, the player who's played the card, and then going to the other player, or in the case of 3 or 4 players, going clockwise around the table. In the sacrifice phase, you will take a sacrifice card of your choice. If you're the player who's played the shrine, you will put this card face down on the altar, and you can choose any one of these 4 sacrifice cards, and you will play it face up on the altar. So the person who has played the shrine is putting down 2 cards, one from their hand that goes face down, and one from the market supply, which will go face up. Going around the table, every other player will now play a sacrifice card from their hand, not from the market, and their card must be played face up. So in this example, my opponent could have chosen to play this card, and this would go face up right over here. This is obviously an optional step, as I mentioned, only when the shrine card is played. If it's not played, this step is skipped in the game itself. The next thing that will happen is that you're drawing cards back up. You will always have a hand size of 3. So if for any reason you have played one, or well, you'd always play one, but if you played more than one card, you're always drawing back up to 3. The way that you take cards is you would take cards from this supply right over here, and you're always starting with the bottom card on any column. Now, if you want, you can obviously choose this and then choose another one from a different column. They do not all have to be in the same column, but they must always be the topmost card available for that specific column. Once you're done taking your cards, so let's say for example, in this particular case, I've taken this card, the next step that will happen is the scoring phase. The scoring phase is determined by, as a result of taking the cards, which is now the new card that is shown face up over here. So in this particular case, if I took this farmer card from the market supply, this is the farmer card that is available and visible. The scoring phase is triggered by this card, and we will now go into having a quick look at how each one of these triggers separately. So if a farmer card is made visible as a result of this action, be those any one of the 4 farmer card types, starting with yourself and then going around the table, you will look at how many farmer cards of that type you have in front of you. As long as you have farmers of that type, you will get 1 sacrifice card from the respective deck, and you will take it and you will put it face down in front of you. If you have the majority in that farmer type, and by majority I mean you have more than the others, and you must have at least 2 to count for that majority, you will take 1 extra sacrifice card and put it in front of you. So again, in this example, if you had only 1 card and your opponent did not have a card, while you do have majority, you do not meet that requirement of having a majority of 2. So you need to have at least 2 to get that added benefit. For all the other different kinds of cards that you could have show up, and these would be the stonemason cards, the priest cards, or the shrine cards, you will also score them, but in slightly different ways. With the stonemason card, you will now give out stones to each of the players based on how many stonemasons they have in front of them. So obviously at the start of the game, me and my player have 1 stonemason each. So we would get 1 stone from the supply. If over the course of the game I had played additional stonemason cards, I would get 1 stone per stonemason that I have played out in front of me. Again, if I have majority in the stonemasons played out in front of me, I would get 1 extra stone from the supply. Moving on to the priest cards, if it is the priest card that is now revealed, each player that has a priest card in front of them will score points for those priest cards. So you will take these victory point tokens from the supply. Same rules still apply. You get 1 victory point for each priest card that is played in front of you. And if you have the majority with at least 2, that rule applies for all of the scoring cards, you will get 1 extra victory point from the supply. Now, if you have the shrine card revealed as a result of this taking a card from the market action, you have the choice of getting between 1 stone or 1 victory point for each of these cards that you have in front of you. If you have multiple of these, you must take the same benefit. So if I had 3 shrine cards in front of me, I cannot split between 2 stones and 1 victory point. They must either be all 3 stones or all 3 victory points. Additionally, again, if you have majority with at least 2 of these cards in front of you, you will get an extra bonus as a result of that, and that extra bonus must also be the same type as the one you picked for the cards in your tableau. And once the scoring is done, you will check if cards have sort of like run out. The end game trigger is basically this deck running out and the market effectively running out, at which point you will skip the scoring in that particular round and move into endgame points. So having looked at what the turn order of an individual play could look like, let's have a quick look at what the endgame points would look like. And before I forget very quickly, these do not replenish immediately when these are used up. These will only replenish when an entire column is empty, in which case you will then draw 4 cards from here and set out a new column, so to speak. If in your action, you result in taking the last card of a particular column. Then you will draw 4 cards to form a new column, and then the top card of the new column is the one that you're basing the scoring on. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, because you may run into that scenario every now and then. So that's roughly the different turn orders that you can see on this turn order card right over here, which you should keep with yourself for at least the first couple of games to get familiar. Once these cards have run out, you will now move into endgame scoring. You will score points from 3 different sources at the end of the game, aside from obviously all the victory point tokens that you would have in front of you. You would get points for each of those shrines. So as you can see, each shrine has a 4 value victory point printed on top of it. So for each shrine you have at the end of the game, they will give you 4 victory points. You will get victory points based on the amount of tokens that you have. So just add them up, and that is the amount of victory points you're getting from those. Lastly, you will also get victory points, and this is one of the key sources of victory points in this game, from the remaining sacrifice cards that you have in your hand. Now, this is where I'll go over this a little bit thoroughly to make sure that it is clear. The value of each of these sacrifice cards at the end of the game is determined by how many of these have been sacrificed in the altar. So if you will remember, some of the information was public, where the cards were played face up. Some of the information was private, where the card was played face down. You're now going to obviously reveal all the different cards that have been played, make nice little stacks of them on the side, and look at which of these goods was sacrificed the most to the least. The good that was sacrificed the most, each sacrifice card of that left in your hand at the end of the game is worth 3 points. Each of the, and then moving down from there, the second most is worth 2 points, the third most is worth 1 point, and the least sacrificed card is worth 0 points. So it is an important thing. It is always important to keep a track of what are the cards that are being played out there versus what are the cards you have left over in your hand. This will be a key source of victory points at the end of the game. So you want to make sure that you keep an eye out for that. Before I end, there's one quick correction I would like to point out. When we were talking about endgame scoring, I forgot to mention that stones also contribute towards the points you earn at the end of the game. Each 5 stone you have left over at the end is worth 1 point each. So to recap very quickly, you will score points for the victory point tokens you've collected over the course of the game during the various scoring phases. You will score 1 point for each 5 stone you have left over at the end of the game. You will score points for the sacrifice cards based on the process we've discussed earlier. And you will score 4 victory points per shrine card that you've played in front of you. Add up all victory points from these 4 different sources, and that's your score for the game. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the teach. Give the game a go, and hope to see you soon. Game on.